All right, so takeaway point there. Remember when God calls you to give up the things of this world to find him. That's an important step in the spiritual life. It's not the end. It's a really important step. All right. From there, Solomon starts showing us the path to joy. He says God can give us enjoyment even in the midst of otherwise tedious work. Food and drink and all the little pleasures of life are gifts from God, and God calls us to enjoy them. This gets paraphrased as eat, drink, and be merry. When I give my children treats, I hope they enjoy them. It's not very satisfying when they grab them and then whine and beg for more. And I expect God feels the same way. He wants to see his children happy and content. He wants to see us enjoying the good gifts he's given us. So we practice gratitude, because gratitude leads to joy. There's nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment from his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God, for apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? And now we come to chapter 3, the most famous passage in Ecclesiastes. It's the passage that makes Solomon the oldest lyrics writer with a #1 hit single on the Billboard charts. I'll read it out loud. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time for love and a time for hate. A time for war and a time for peace. We are called to accept the rhythms of life. They are out of our control, starting with birth and death and continuing on to all the others. What do we do with them? Do we fight them or do we dance to them? Now, Solomon calls life's patterns not tedious, but beautiful. He says, and he has made everything beautiful in its time. Enjoy each season while it lasts. Seasons of life change. This won't be forever. Then Solomon repeats his standard advice. Eat, drink, and take pleasure in our work. Not mindless carousing, but mindfully enjoying God's good pleasures in everyday life and having that attitude of gratitude. Quote, I know that there is nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. All right, here we come to my first Solomon story. For years, I was zealous about making the best possible decision in each moment about how to live my life for God. It was a good idea. It was well-intentioned. It was too much. I would constantly pray to God about every little thing. God, show me what to do. And if I prayed and I thought about it and I still didn't know, I would get frustrated. Then one day when I prayed, Solomon, show me what to do, I heard a very clear answer. It matters remarkably little what you do. Well, that answer was like a cold bucket of water to the head. And he wasn't done. He continued, how important do you think you are anyway? And I answered, not very. I put my plans for the afternoon on hold. I poured a glass of wine, got out the chocolate, and started asking myself, did I hear that right? And the answer was, yes, I heard that right. Solomon's words felt like a bucket of cold water to the face, but you know what? They also felt like freedom. Jesus said, I no longer call you slaves, but friends. Jesus said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Paul said, "For freedom, Christ has set us free." God can do all kinds of things in the world without our help. He does all kinds of good things in the world without our help every day. That said, he loves to work through us. He invites us to let him work through us. He delights in working through us. But what use to God are stressed out perfectionistic helpers? Not very. It is vitally important that if we have a death grip on life, we relax it and learn to dance to its rhythms, relax, and enjoy. All right, the inscrutability of God. Solomon adds that God has placed eternity into our minds. We can imagine eternity. We long for eternity, but we don't get to see the whole picture yet. God is weaving a more intricate tapestry than we can possibly imagine, and we don't get to see the finished product until the final judgment. This theme comes up over and over again, the inscrutability of God. In chapter 8, we hear, "I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out." Remember our human limitations. In chapter 11, he says, "As you do not know how the spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything." We want to know what God is doing in our lives, but generally, we don't. Solomon's story number 2. 2 years ago at Easter Vigil, I was kneeling in the second row, about to go up for communion, and I was praying about adopting our new foster kids. DCS had asked if we were interested in adoption, and I had said yes, and now I was going, oh boy, did I really mean that? It looked like God was leading us that way. He'd given us signs every step of the way. And yet, I really wanted to know, why? Is pouring the next 15 years of our lives into these beautiful, exhausting kids really, really the best possible use of our lives? And while I'm thinking about this, I hear from Solomon, "Consider the lilies." It was Easter Vigil. There were about 40 pots of lilies right in front of me. And I said, "I'm staring right at them. They're rather hard to miss." He continued, "Do they know what their purpose is?" And I decided to give it a serious moment of thought. All right, well, the oxygen cycle, to be beautiful, and here in church to proclaim the resurrection. Do the lilies know any of that? No, they do not know what their purpose is. Neither will you. Again, it was a wonderfully freeing moment. I realized that our purpose in life is beyond our comprehension, and the part that we can understand, God generally doesn't show us. Our job is simply to trust that God is doing a work in and through us beyond anything we can imagine. Better than anything we could plan for ourselves. Our job is to say, "Yes, God, I will serve. I will serve without understanding what you are doing or why. Help me to be content with that, to live gratitude and joy, to live life and life abundantly." Thoughts?
I think that's the one hard part that makes Ecclesiastes, or has made it so hard for me.
And yet there's something so freeing about it. He's God, we're not. We'll leave it to him. Just do the next thing in front of us.
When I read this book, you've almost got to have a lot of gray hair to understand it completely. You're doing a beautiful job, but it takes a lot of scars to get there.
Yeah, no, I do realize the ridiculousness of being the youngest person in class teaching this book. And yet, I can still look back on the first half or third or what have you of my life and still see the things God has done and that he does bring us through everything. All right, let's move on to work. We've already heard how Ecclesiastes has plenty to say about the pointlessness of work, at least from the perspective of Solomon, who tells us he struggled with overwork. Yet he goes on to give us more insights. Look at chapter 4, verses 4 through 6. "Then I saw that all toil and all skill in work come from a man's envy of his neighbor. This also is vanity and a striving after wind." Wow. How much of what we do is really motivated by envy? How much of it comes from a sense of competition? A sense of wanting to be better than other people at something? How much of it comes from a sense of inadequacy, of needing to accomplish something so we can have a real purpose? That's the flip side of it. Solomon says these attitudes are unhealthy. Just do the work in front of you. Just do the work God gives you to do. Next verse. Don't neglect your work. The fool folds his hands and eats his own flesh. In other words, if you don't do the necessary work in front of you, you're hurting yourself. You're not taking care of the people around you. You're not taking care of your own body. You're not taking care of your own health. It's like eating your own flesh. Point number 3. Better is a handful of quietness than 2 hands full of toil and a striving after wind. That brings us back to what you were saying earlier, how now you get to seek God in the quietness, and wow, that's a good thing. Beware of pointless and unnecessary work. Enjoy some quiet time. That's a theme Solomon refers to over and over again. Which brings me to Solomon's story number 3. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was busy. I had an appointment in about an hour and a half, but until then I was trying to decide whether I should work on my next class or clean my messy house. And I prayed, Solomon, show me what to do. Then I thought, well, that was pretty abrupt, maybe a little rude. Maybe I should try for more politeness. So I started over again. Solomon, thank you so much for everything you've done for me. Thank you so much for, helping me with things. Thank you so much for helping show me the best way to live. If you don't mind, I do have one small question that I would really love your help with. And then it was the strangest thing. It was like all my thoughts just floated out of my head. I could not for the life of me remember what I was trying to ask Solomon. I spent a few seconds trying very hard to remember, and then I felt Solomon's presence. He was amused. He felt a little sorry for me trying that hard, and he said, relax. I flopped back on the couch like a rag doll. Then he said, now, you didn't get a very good Sabbath yesterday, did you? So for the rest of today, you will do no work. Got it? Got it. The rest of the day went great. I took Rachel for a walk, I took the kids to the movies, and I got a very memorable reminder. Relax and enjoy life. Don't overwork.